Assalamu alaikum everyone, and welcome back to That Canadian Brother. I'm Sadat Anwar, and today I have a very special guest that I'm going to be interviewing, which is Pastor Jeff Pippenger. Pastor Jeff Pippenger is a Christian faith leader. He's the leader of a small Christian ministry in Arkansas in the US, and he recently was in multiple news headlines due to a very controversial ad that he had put in the Tennessean. The Tennessean is the most largely circulated newspaper in the state of Tennessee in the US. And that ad on June 21st was a full-page ad in the paper with the headline that Islam will nuke Nashville on July 18th of this year, 2020. So Pastor Jeff has agreed very graciously to this interview, to talk with us, because like myself, he feels that there's no harm in talking, in speaking, in sharing our views, in trying to better understand one another. And we definitely are interested in hearing some of his explanation for why he believes that Islam is going to nuke July 18th. So welcome, Pastor Jeff, and thanks again for agreeing to this interview. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome, but typically they don't call me pastor. They might call me elder, but not pastor, but it isn't a problem.
Okay. And perhaps I can clarify then as to is there a particular Protestant faith tradition or denomination that you would associate with, or that your ministry would be kind of affiliated with?
Well, we have people that follow and support what we teach prophetically all over the world, in every continent. And all of them are Seventh-day Adventists, but many of them have been kicked out of the Seventh-day Adventist Church because of our prophetic beliefs. Okay, so but still the basic doctrines of the Seventh-day Adventist Church is what we hold to, even though we're no longer members in good standing. Some are, but most aren't. Right. Or many aren't. I don't know, percentage-wise.
Yeah. On a light note, I just take this with a pinch of salt, but I say that if I was going to start my own a religious group or my own religion, it would be called Three-Day Adventists, because I believe Friday, Saturday, and Sunday should be a universal holiday weekend for all people, right? So does that mean that you don't eat pork, I guess, Elder?
Yeah, we follow the health principles that Adventists uphold.
That's great. That's great. Okay.
We have lots in common with Islamic faith. Adventists do.
Yeah. So as we discussed in our correspondence, Elder Jeff, I completely understand, and I'm sympathetic, and I think the viewers will be sympathetic to the fact that it will not be possible for you to explain in detail how you arrived at the idea that Islam will nuke Nashville on July 18th, 2020. It will not be possible for you to work that out in detail in a half-an-hour interview. Especially because this is interactive and we want to keep the viewers interested, so we're throwing questions back and forth. But is it possible for you to, in a couple of minutes or more, is it possible for you to condense perhaps the methodology by which you arrived at this prophecy? In other words, what books of the Bible were relevant to you extracting this prophecy? And I mean, I don't know, is there a term or a word for the methodology by which people extract such prophecies, especially from the book of Revelation? I know people take certain numbers and certain symbols, and that's how they arrive at certain conclusions. I know that's a big ask, but if you can just help us out. And keep in mind that a lot of the Muslim viewers that will be watching this are not going to be very familiar with the book of Revelation or the book of Daniel, which are, I think, difficult books for non-specialists to understand.
Okay, I disagree with your premise. It's a premise that almost all of mankind holds, that Daniel and Revelation are difficult books. At the beginning of the book of Revelation, there's a blessing upon all those that read it. And I think it's human teachings that lead us to believe that The Bible can't be understood by the most simple person if he will apply himself. But that's neither here nor there. There are several rules of interpretation that we hold to in this movement that aren't typically held to in the Seventh-day Adventist Church or the Protestant Church or the Catholic Church when we approach Bible prophecy. And if you were going to put a label on the methodology that we employ, it would be proof texting, which means that we let the Bible define itself by, if a subject comes up, we want to find that subject addressed 2 or 3 times in the Bible and let the Bible define what that represents. We don't trust in human understanding of history or human understanding of the Greek and Hebrew language. We let the Bible define it. That's called proof texting, typically, as opposed to hermeneutics, higher criticism of historical, grammatical expertise. This is the approach of methodology that the beginning of the Seventh-day Adventist Church also employed, but after 20 years, they begin to set that aside. For instance, the reason that I was kicked out of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, and I'm not complaining about that, but the reason that I was kicked out of the Seventh-day Adventist Church was because I believed in a particular prophecy that every one of those people that were the founders of the Seventh-day Adventist Church believed in and taught. So in the history of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, they've set aside their beginning teachings, and we still use those, and that's called proof texting.
Okay.
And a primary understanding of early Adventism was the role of Islam in Bible prophecy, and we agree with that. And in the book of Revelation chapter 9 is exclusively the history of the first and second great jihads. Muhammad is addressed in there, but the story of Islam beginning in chapter 9 goes all the way through chapter 18. So well over half the book of Revelation deals with Islam. And that's how the pioneers of the Adventist Church understood it as well. Abu Bakr is addressed in Revelation 9:4. And the whole history of the first, second jihad. And then in Revelation 18, you have 9/11 and the arrival of the third jihad. So much of the book of Revelation is about Islam.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And even though, I mean, I understand that it would not be Revelation, your interpretation of Revelation speaking about the history of Islam would probably not be in a positive context. It would probably be more in a negative.
Very positive.
Okay. But so yeah, I mean, all the same, then I do thank you, because there's nothing worse than being irrelevant. So at least we know Islam is relevant for the end times. Islam is relevant for prophetic history, even according to the Bible. And perhaps this might motivate Christians to take a closer look at the Bible and see what it has to say about Islam, because surely a religion that is followed by 1.2 billion people on the earth today, the Bible, if it is a complete book, it must have something to say about Islam and the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. So I can concur with you, at least part way. I can understand where you're coming from.
The promise to Hagar,
Yeah.
that he would make Ishmael a great nation.
Right. Now, Elder Jeff, I did try to put my cards on the table. I let you know that, look, I'm coming from the Muslim faith community. And I did let you know that, look, I have some skeptical questions for you, because like most Christians, I'm not convinced that July 18th Nashville will be attacked by Islam. So I have some skeptical.
I have a problem with that. I get that.
Yeah, I have some skeptical questions about that. But I want to be fair, because I remember you said something in the email, and that kind of put a bit of a moral onus on me. You said you don't want this. First of all, you didn't want this interview to be adversarial in any way. And you also said that you don't want to come across as a wacky person, or this prophecy sounding like a wacky prophecy that is not grounded in something. So although we don't have the time to do a deep dive into the books of Daniel and Revelation at this point, I did have a skim read of your essay on your website, And that essay could be expanded into a whole series of lectures, I'm sure, by yourself. But just to be fair, for those people who think this is wacky stuff, it's just being pulled out of thin air, and to clarify again, I am not convinced that this is going to happen, just to be clear. But to give you the chance, do you want to plug the audience to your website or to any videos that you have on YouTube where if they want to, they can investigate and give you a fair listening and hear how you extract this prophecy out of the Bible?
Up on this whiteboard is the two websites where we have the warning to Nashville. You
Okay.
see that?
Yeah. So midnightcry.news and July 18. So July 18.news. So for those who are inclined to do so, and especially some of the Christian viewers who might also be very interested in prophecies in the book of Revelation and Daniel and so forth, they can go to these websites, and before they just disregard or just wave away this prophecy, they can investigate deeper. And as I said, I did have a quick read of your essay. So Elder Jeff, I'm curious to know, when did you arrive at this interpretation? Like, was there a sudden aha moment? Was it years of study? I'm kind of picturing like those James Bond moments where James Bond discovers where the nuclear device is and when it's going to be detonated, and how did you stumble across this prophecy?
Well, we were opened up to the significance of Islam after 9/11, and we then began to investigate the original understanding of Adventism concerning Islam. And from there, it grew. By 2015, 2016, we came to understand that Donald Trump would be the last president of the United States. And we understood from a prophecy in the Bible about Balaam that Islam would strike the United States 3 times, once at 9/11, once at July 18th, and once on December 25th. We didn't have the dates at that time, but for years we understood Islam strikes the United States 3 times. The chronology came together more recently over the past couple years. But one of the things I would want you to understand is that in terms of Seventh-day Adventism, they believe, although the leadership I don't believe actually believes this anymore, but they believe, they claim in their books, they have the same reverence for Ellen White as a prophetess as Islam does for Muhammad being a prophet, okay? So the prophecy about Nashville comes from the writings of Ellen White. So she is the point of reference for us. She sees fireballs come down, wipe out Nashville, and she sees people coming to a group of people that knew these things and said, we knew about this. And a group of people says, you knew about it and you didn't warn us. And when you think that through, she gave these warnings at the turn of the century, about 1902. So in order for those people to have given a warning, they had to have a time associated with it, or it would have required the Adventist Church every couple months, warn Nashville, warn Nashville. So the element of time, the location of Nashville, is based upon the writings of Ellen White. And when you look at the writings of Ellen White, you'll see that she described September 11th, 2001 and the bringing down of the Twin Towers in very great detail. So she validates our claims as much as the Bible does. And
although on your website in the essay, you did concede that she did not say anything about that date, September 11th, 2000.
No, what she says very clearly is, let me read this to you. It's just real short. I brought it. I thought this might come up. She's responding to someone that claimed that she said New York City was going to be wiped out by a tidal wave. Okay, she's responding. She says, now comes the word that I've declared that New York is to be swept away by a tidal wave. This I have never said. I have said, as I looked at the great buildings going up there, story after story, what terrible scenes will take place when the Lord shall arise to shake terribly the earth. Then the words of Revelation 18:1-3 will be fulfilled. The whole of the 18th chapter of Revelation is a warning of what is coming on the earth, but I have no light in particular in regard to what is coming on New York, only that I know one day the great buildings there will be thrown down by the turning and overturning of God's power. From the light given me, I know that destruction is in the world. One word from the Lord, one touch of his mighty power, and these massive structures will fall. Scenes will take place, the fearfulness of which we cannot imagine. And if you've ever looked at the skyline of New York City before the Twin Towers came down, they stand out. They are the great buildings of New York City. So she said she knew that one day they would come down, and you and I know that one day was September 11th, 2001.
Yeah, interesting. And it's very reminiscent of the Quran talking about the end of time as well too. The Quran mentions, for example, the mountains being turned into smoke. And of course, for the 7th century Arabian audience, you know, there was no equivalent of Manhattan high-rises, concrete high-rises, but the language, I think, evokes some of the same images that are described there by Ellen White in a more modern context. If I can move on, because I've got a long list of questions here, which are not just from me, but from many other people that are interested in asking, is like, why Nashville? Why Nashville? Is it because Muslims don't like country music, or they don't like Taylor Swift, or something like this? I do understand that.
I'll try to make you understand how we understand that.
Yeah, but if I may, what I'm not asking you is to explain how you identified Nashville from the Bible, because that can be investigated when people read the actual essay. I guess what I'm asking is, like, why did God select Nashville in the first place?
That's what I want to answer.
Yeah, because Washington, D.C., you know, we would understand, right? But why Nashville?
First, let me tell you something that Seventh-day Adventists agree with Islam about, but Islam probably isn't aware of it, and the Seventh-day Adventist Church would deny it. But if you went into their books, you can prove that they believe what I'm going to tell you. They teach that the second beast of Revelation 13, the earth beast, the beast that comes out of the earth, is the United States. And they're correct. And that it begins as a lamb and it ends up speaking as a dragon. Okay? Therefore, the Seventh-day Adventist Church says that at the end of the history of the United States, it speaks as a dragon. So when Islam says today that the United States is the great Satan, they're on the same page. You follow me? The Seventh-day Adventist Church is saying the United States is going to speak as a dragon. That's a symbol of Satan. In Revelation 13, there are 3 characteristics about the United States. There's more than 3, but 3 that I want to point out for you. 1, it comes up out of the earth. And 2, it forces the world to receive the mark of the beast in order to buy or sell, economic power, and it forces the world to receive the mark of the beast based upon the pain of death, military power. That's the characteristics of Revelation 13 in the United States. So when you see 9/11 and you see the Twin Towers going down, you're seeing the symbols of the United States in Bible prophecy being economic strength coming down. The symbol of the United States military strength was the Pentagon. It was also hit. And that 4th airplane went into the earth because it was the earth beast. Okay, so I'm saying when you see what Sister White says about 9/11, it's in agreement with Revelation, the characteristics of the United States. So when you come to Nashville, Nashville claims to be, it takes the title upon itself, the Athens of the South. Okay, and it's about education. The world being led to Armageddon is about education, true education and false education. And Greek education is a symbol of rebellion against God. It's humanism. It's the education of the globalists. And the Greeks are known for lifting up the idolatry of sports and the idolatry of education. And the center of that lifting up in the United States is Nashville, Tennessee. So just as the symbol of the economic might of the United States went down with the Twin Towers at 9/11, and the symbol of the military might of the United States was hit when the Pentagon was hit, Nashville is being struck because it's the symbol of Greek education, and Greek education is the education of the globalists. It's the humanism. It's the idolatry of sports, the Olympics, the Greek Olympics. It's the idolatry of the education that has misled the world to accept what's happening in the world today.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I am skeptical and I have questions around that. But at the same time, two important points. One is I can understand where you're coming from now, hearing you in person as well as reading your essay. And that's important because, to be fair, most Muslims would have assumed, including myself, to be honest with you, most Muslims would have been quite judgmental and assumed that you're coming from a place of hate. You hate Muslims, and that's why you came up with this prophecy. But the more I read your essay, even though I don't agree with it, and I can give a couple of quick reasons why, but even though I don't agree with it, I appreciated the fact that this is your genuine interpretation of Scripture. This is what you sincerely hold to be true, and it's not actually motivated by any hate. And even when I saw a couple of your videos on YouTube, and even as I talk to you now, you are not, to be honest, what I expected you to be. I thought maybe you're going to be a ranting, foaming at the mouth, angry kind of pastor, and that was not the case at all. But just to throw out a couple of reasons for why not only me, but many other Christians, many other Muslims as well as Christians could be skeptical, just to throw out the other side's view here, is, for me, Elder Jeff, it's not that what you're saying is impossible. It's not that what you're saying can't happen. The way you're connecting the pieces, they can be connected that way. But I'm sure there are many other Christian theologians and scholars of the Bible who would say, well, you can just as easily arrange the pieces in other ways as well too. So for example, to be more specific, you identified Nashville as the symbol of pagan Greek philosophy and paganism in the US, and that's why it needs to be struck, and that's why God's judgment needs to come down there. But I was looking into the issue just a little bit, and so for example, compulsory schooling actually started in America in the state of Massachusetts in 1852. So we could just as easily say that the downward trend in thinking and the promotion of a secular, godless humanism, we could trace that trend back to Massachusetts, for example. Or we could go to 1821, where Boston, which is also in Massachusetts actually, started the first public government-funded public school. We could go further back to 1635, 1635 was the first public school in Boston. It was the Boston Latin School. So my point is that to many onlookers and skeptics, it seems as if like things are being randomly picked. Is it possible to respond to that in a minute so I can move on to the other questions?
I'll give you a point of reference that maybe that you can relate to. You're going to make your decisions based upon the Quran, upon the Prophet Muhammad. And I've already told you, my point of reference for Nashville is a prophecy from Ellen White. And Seventh-day Adventists relate to her writings the same way you relate to the Quran. So my starting point for Nashville is that she was shown dreams where Nashville gets wiped out by these fireballs. That's the first point of reference.
Okay.
The other evidence comes on top of that.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. So then you could understand, if you're trying to be empathetic, you could understand why non-Adventist Christians might not be sold on your interpretation of the Bible, because they're missing that piece of Ellen White's dreams.
One of the things I think that people are misunderstanding is when we seen this truth, we had the responsibility to put a warning out. So we set up a website that has the warning. But in order to get people to look at the warning, we had to do an advertising campaign. And what has created the stir is the advertising campaign. But follow me on this, if you will. I'll be real fast. We determined we were going to use 5 or 6 avenues to advertise. We were going to mail to 100,000 homes in Nashville. We were going to put up a billboard. We were going to use Google. We might use Facebook. And we were going to use the Tennessean. On a Monday, the billboard and the mail-out people backed out. They ran the first advertisement on Wednesday, the second advertisement on Sunday. We had budgeted, we had gathered the information on what that was going to cost, and it was going to cost $70,000, and we were prepared to pay it. Once the letters got by the editorial staff of the Tennessean and they realized they had made a mistake with their policy and they were in trouble and receiving flack, I have an email where they're refunding us all our money. So what I want you to understand is that we had a responsibility to give a warning, but we needed to have an advertisement campaign to direct people to the warning, to the website. And we decided we'd spend $70,000 to do that. And we didn't spend $1. We got all the money back, and this advertising campaign has went around the world.
Yeah.
Explain that one to me.
Yeah, and 70,000 could have some symbolic value as well too. I know the number 7 in Semitic culture has a lot of value. So you've got Jesus's 70 disciples, for example, or 72. And but well, on a related note, then, Elder Jeff. If you see the fact that your money was refunded as some kind of vindication of your theology or your religion, what about the fact that the Tennessean has actually given $14,000, which I think is the price that you paid for the ad? They've given that to the Muslim Advocacy of America. I don't have the I don't know how to relate to that, because
so
what but just to finish that point, I mean, yeah, they unfortunately I don't have the name of that Muslim organization. I think it's Muslim Advocacy of America, something like that, and they've also been given $50,000 in ad credit money. So some people would say, some Christians would say that you've strengthened the hands of Islam in some small way.
Yeah, but there's a problem with that. I have an email where they're refunding us all our money. So they're telling us, they're giving us all our advertising money back, but they're telling the public that they're giving that money to this Islamic charity and they're going to do these other things. This is just political correctness that's happening on that level, because you have 2 choices you can choose from. You can determine that I'm a wild-eyed, crazy fanatic that has no point of reference for this crazy prophetic interpretation. And if that's the case, why would you think anyone would believe what I'm saying? And if no one believes what I'm saying, what justification do you have to say that I've created some kind of backlash against Islam? If no one believes it, why are they going to be a backlash against Islam? Which is it?
Yeah, but I think you have to try to see it from our perspective as well too, Elder Jeff. So for example, is it yesterday or 2 days ago, and I'll put up the headline when I edit the video, I'll put in the headline there so people can see it. I don't have it ready here. A mosque in Nashville was vandalized just yesterday or the day before. Now that may or may not have anything to do with the ad that you put in there, but in that kind of climate of fear that many Muslims do feel that they're in, there are crazy people out there. You know, there are oddballs who will interpret Islam will nuke Nashville as that Muslim lady with the hijab walking down the street of Nashville, she's part of the problem. I need to at least verbally tell her that she needs to go home, right? That kind of thing. So I think, and if you're talking about political correctness, and I agree that, I do agree that sometimes political correctness has just gone too far. I would even agree if you were to say that sometimes this label of Islamophobia is misused or it's gone too far. But where I'm going with this is that, yeah, if we're talking about political correctness, imagine if a Muslim organization had paid for that ad. I mean, imagine if there was a peaceful Muslim organization, they themselves are not advocating terrorism, but they were putting in the ad that Islam is going to nuke Nashville on July 18th. Like, the public outcry would have been even greater. I know it's been great, but it would have been even greater than what it's been now. This morning I typed in Google, Christian leaders condemn Nashville ad. And I didn't see anything. I really didn't see anything. Now, if it was a Muslim organization that had done that, you know, not only Christian organizations would have been quick to condemn it, and atheist organizations, but even American Muslim organizations would have ran in order to quickly disassociate themselves from any kind of extremist thought, right? So this is just the other point of view I'm sharing so that you might understand.
The Seventh-day Adventist Church has come out against it. They're still considered Christian in spite of their apostasy. One of the retired leaders of the 700 Club has come out against it. I haven't been tracking who's coming out against it, but let me remind you that it is political correctness in the United States. Maybe not in other countries, but I'm under a conviction that I have a responsibility to warn Nashville based upon a prophetic understanding from God's word. In the United States, both freedom of the press, freedom of speech, and freedom of religious preference are guaranteed by the Constitution. So if I get restricted from giving that warning in order to preserve or protect those that are going to fall under some crazy response against Islam based upon it, then that Islamic phobia, a response, is inhibiting or destroying my rights to exercise in agreement with the Constitution of the United States. So what if the warning is valid? Would I have a responsibility to warn Nashville to not be in town on July 18th?
Absolutely. You know, absolutely. If you're convinced of that, then the moral and ethical thing for you to do would be to...
One other thing, just for your audience to know. Prophetically, I teach and I understand and I believe that the Christians at the end of the world, when a great persecution against them is going to take place, that the power that protects them in that crisis is Islam. Okay, that's what the original Adventist church understood as well. So for people to think that I'm automatically anti-Islam, when prophetically I understand that through history, Islam has been the preservative of genuine Christianity. It preserved the King James Bible. It is what Martin Luther said, preserved the Protestant Reformation, and it's what's going to preserve God's people at the end of the world. It's a political correct label they've placed up on me without understanding what my understanding of Islam is.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. I mean, this interview has kind of taken a different turn in a way than I expected, and that's a pleasant turn. That's fine. I think viewers will find that very interesting and very compelling. And yeah, I do remember having studied that when Islam expanded, for example, into Egypt and other parts of the Middle East, whereas the Monophysite church, this is just an example, the Monophysite church was being persecuted by the Byzantine Orthodox Christians, but when Islam came in, it didn't really matter to them who's Monophysite and who's Orthodox. Just like today, it doesn't matter to us particularly whether you're Protestant or Catholic. It's just like you're Christian, fine. So Islam kind of equaled the playing field amongst Christians and said, look, you're Christians, you're people of the book, you pay the jizya, you pay the tax, you can keep your church. So indirectly, Islam actually helped up preserving certain strands of thought within Christianity, which otherwise might have been completely suppressed and eradicated by the Greek Orthodox Byzantine Church. Elder Jeff, there's lots of important questions. I still have tough questions to throw at you. So if we can maybe make this a quick kind of back and forth thing. Yeah, because I think, you know, you've been able to contextualize and clarify your stance, and hopefully, I'm genuinely hoping that Muslims watching this, even if they think your prophecy is wacky, But I don't think they're going to come away from this thinking that you're a hateful person, and we should extend that good opinion to you, because that's what we're asking other people to do with us too. We're asking other people to speak with Muslims, to speak with Muslim faith leaders and imams, and to not judge us simply by news headlines and things that you see on the TV. So here are some quick questions. Please, if you can, Elder Jeff, try to limit your answers to even 30 seconds if you can. Why don't we have a specific time? This is one of the big questions. I don't know if you can see this very well. Is it flipped the wrong way, or can you read
Or
it?
that way.
Sorry?
A bit more that way.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. There we go. Yeah, there we go. Oh, right. Okay. This is something that somebody left at my doorstep in 1992. I've been sitting on it for the past 28 years, and I knew the day would come when it would come in handy. So today I'm able to present it, to the world. This group, which again, there's a tendency for these groups to be based in the U.S. This was from Aurora, Colorado. Although I think it might be a Korean American church, it seems like. So yeah, they said the rapture is going to happen on October 28th, 1992. Now, because of the internet, I was able to look up this church. I was able to look up this prophecy, and they had even said that it would happen 9 a.m. in the morning. So I admit, Elder Jeff, that I'm inserting a little bit of a entertainment value now into the interview. So if you want to answer it, you can. If you don't have any thoughts on it, fine. But do we have a time? I mean, can Nashvillians on July 18th, will they have time for breakfast or lunch, or when is this going to happen? Because these guys actually predicted 9 a.m. They said 9 a.m.
All I know, we don't have a time of day.
That's fine. Now, this is the big question, which I don't want to miss in case our interview does get cut off short by Zoom. I might repeat the question at the end again, but the big question I think that would be on everyone's mind, which is the elephant in the room, is what if this happens? In other words, what if it doesn't happen? What if July 18th comes and goes, and not only yourself, but your ministry and Ellen White's prophecy, basically. Ellen White's prophecy would have been proven to be wrong. What stance will you take then? What would you say to me on July 19th?
Well, I might admit that I was wrong, but Ellen White did not put the characteristics of the prediction that we've placed upon it. She didn't identify July 18th, nor did she identify nuclear weapons, nor did she identify Islam. So even if I have erred on those three attributes, I've never seen anything that she's ever said that doesn't come to pass.
Now, I mean, I hate to kind of play the role of the skeptic atheist type, but those voices are there in the back of my head, and I can imagine an atheist, someone who's opposed to religion altogether, someone who's opposed to the supernatural and prophecy altogether. I can imagine them saying, that what you're saying to me is that if this attack happens on July 18th, it would be an incredible vindication of Sister Ellen White and Seventh Adventist Church, at least their original beliefs, that is, because look at this amazing prophecy that she made and how it was fulfilled. But if the prophecy doesn't come true, you have a way out, which is that, look, what you're basically saying to me is the prophecy is so ambiguous, there's no date on it.
No, that wasn't what I said. You got it recorded. You go check. I said I would be wrong, but I'm not prepared to say that the more limited presentation she made about Nashville would be wrong, but I've been wrong before.
Okay. Here's another big question that I've just been waiting to get to is, in the context of the ad that you put out, which says Islam will nuke Nashville July 18th, who is Islam? Like, do we know who Islam is?
I'm talking about Islam and Bible prophecy. And on Bible prophecy, the primary rule is that Jesus illustrates the end from the beginning, and Islam is first introduced into Bible prophecy, the religion, through Muhammad in 606, but it's first introduced in Bible prophecy through Ishmael. And in Genesis 16:12, it says, Ishmael would be a wild man, his hand would be against every man, and every man's hand would be against him. therefore teaching that the descendants of Ishmael are the issue at the end of the world that bring the one world government together. Every man's hand comes against Islam. So I forgot what your question.
Well. To be even more specific, are you saying that Iran, for example, will it be Iran that will attack, or Iraq will attack America? Will it be Syria that will attack America?
I have no idea. I do not believe that logistically Syria, Iran, Iraq have the technical capability of sending an ICBM from their part of the world to this part of the world. I do know of three very clear connections between Islam at the end of the world and Russia. But my tendency is to believe that the attack of 9/11 took place with airplanes that were located here in the United States, that it may very well be something that is hijacked here in the United States. But don't get me wrong. I find it just as implausible to think that Nashville is going to get hit by nuclear weapons on July 18th as anyone else. I'm simply placing the prophetic message in the context as I understand it. I don't think in the time of Noah that anyone had ever seen rain before, and they could not believe that there would be rain, and suddenly there was rain.
In other words, it's almost a supernatural intervention in human history. That
Islam is a tool in the hand of the Lord.
Okay. Yeah, earlier on you had mentioned, and just to correct myself, I said I didn't find any Christian organizations condemning you, but yeah, actually the only individual name that I've found so far is Terry Heaton, who you alluded to earlier on. Actually, he's the former executive producer of the 700 Club. So my question to you is, what would you say to not only Terry Heaton, but what would you say to the 700 Club and other Christian ministries and organizations that don't agree with your prophecy? Personally, I found it a bit hypocritical that Terry Heaton called your words nonsense, and because on the 700 Club, Pat Robertson has made numerous false prophecies. Back in 2007, he said that towards the latter half of 2007, there will be major terrorist attacks on America, which will throw the country into complete chaos. And that did not come to pass. So I don't know what moral standing such people have to condemn you, but what would you say to Christians who don't agree with you?
There's only one definition of the word Protestant. And when we're talking about Christians in the United States, we're calling them Protestant Christians. And the only definition for Protestant is to protest Rome. They quit protesting the Roman Catholic Church. And when they did so, they took up her rules of prophetic interpretation, and they've come to the same conclusions. And Muhammad was raised up to chastise the apostasy of the Roman Catholic Church. Okay, you may not recognize that, but that's why God raised him up. The Roman Catholic Church took the 10 Commandments, they removed the second commandment out of it about worshiping idols, and Muhammad was raised up to protest that idolatry had come into the church.
This is fascinating because, again, half jokingly, I often say to my Christian friends, to my Protestant Christian friends, I often say that Muslims are the original Protestants because we've been protesting the Roman Catholic Church for the past 1400 years, whether it's praying through the Virgin Mary, whether it's icons and idols in the church. In fact, we believe, with respect, we believe that the Protestants, yourself included, with respect, have not gone far enough in their protesting of the Roman Catholic faith, because as you know, we don't see Jesus as part of the divine Godhead. We see him as a human Messiah, messenger, prophet, and teacher sent by God. But so yeah, I concur with you that we also protest the idolatry and other aspects of Catholic practice, such as monasticism, or basically the priests and the nuns not being allowed to marry, which the Quran says God never prescribed for them. They prescribed it for themselves, and even then they didn't hold to it the way they should have held to it. Elder Jeff, so we don't know who Islam is in the context of the ad that you gave. What would you say to those Muslim civil liberty organizations and groups in the U.S. who would say that, like, if this isn't Islamophobia, what is? Because from the perspective of people who are not part of your ministry, this is not a rationally grounded fear. And I think to some extent you might even concede that it's not purely rational. Like when you're putting faith in Ellen White's visions, that's not purely a rational, objective argument. That's also a faith-based argument, which is fine. I mean, I'm a man of faith. I place my trust in the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and he's predicted things which rationally I might not be able to explain. But I do hold to it. I do believe in it. So would this technically, at least technically, would this fall into the category of Islamophobia? That because it's not a rationally grounded belief that, as you said, as you conceded, that Syria and Iraq and these countries would be able to detonate a nuclear device in Nashville by next month?
Guess it depends on who's defining Islamic phobia. And I still think that that is political correctness for this reason.
Okay. Yeah.
If you read what I've written on the website, what I've taught over the past 25 years, you will find that probably the more derogatory things that I've said are against Protestant Christianity, Donald Trump, and the United Nations, and the papacy. Okay? And the United Nations, the globalists, what they've done to Islam, Islam should kind of relate to my attitude about them. It's the globalists that put the Jews into the Middle East after World War II for the purpose of creating a flashpoint for the Third World War. That's what they teach in their writings. They taught in order to bring a one world government into existence, it would take 3 world wars, and they purposely contributed to putting the Jews back into the Middle East after World War II so that they would have that point of reference. And you can see what it does to this Islamic mentality that the Jews are in Palestine.
Yeah.
Donald Trump, I have taught directly, is about to become a dictator and implement martial law. That seems a bit more derogatory than anything I might have said about Islam. And yet the people that have called us, and with all the vile words that they're leaving on our answering machines about me being Islamic phobia and cursing at us.
Yeah.
There's a good percentage of them when they're done, well, they'll say, and this to Trump too. They've made the assumption, evidently, that I'm some kind of Trump supporter based upon the fact that they've heard that I'm attacking Islam. And it tells me they haven't even listened to what was out there. So what I'm saying about the accusation about this material being anti-Islamic, it's anti-everything because Christ is about to return and the whole world needs to wake up to this fact.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm just saying in hindsight, in 2020, maybe even if I was a Christian and part of your ministry, maybe what I might have said to you, Elder Jeff, is that the wording of the ad then might be misleading, and I can understand why Muslims would assume that you're some kind of hateful, right-wing, Trump-supporting, immigrant-hating kind of Christian, which you're not. But from the wording, when you put Islam will nuke Nashville, like even if I was part of your ministry, I might have said, why not put in the ad, like why not make it more generic, like God's judgment is going to come on Nashville on July 18th. And that way people wouldn't get the wrong idea either. They would understand that you're saying that some kind of calamity, major calamity is going to strike, and either we need to repent or we need to physically leave Nashville or something like that. But anyhow, the ad is what it is. You did indirectly answer what was going to be my next question.
And the ad worked.
Yeah, well then let me ask you a tough question, Elder Jeff. Then the ad worked. So some people would say that you were basically looking for attention. And I guess in a way you're conceding that you are looking for attention for the purpose of helping people so that they don't die. But I mean, this is an accusation that they would make, that, yeah, you were looking to be sensationalist and to get attention, possibly even for yourself or your ministry.
Well, it might be to give a warning so people don't die, but that was secondary to me. The primary warning is that the United States and the world is about to go into the time period of Revelation 13, when the whole world is going to be confronted with the mark of the beast test. And they need to be awakened to this crisis. Okay, so it's not simply Nashville, it's what follows hereafter. When that starts, end time events, as illustrated in the books of Daniel and Revelation, are underway.
Yeah, like you mentioned earlier on, Christmas 2020 is pretty much going to get, destroyed as well too. So, I mean, I guess you've indirectly answered a couple of the other questions that I wanted to ask. I mean, I was going to ask, like, is Donald Trump aware of this imminent threat? Is his government aware of this imminent threat? And I was going to jokingly ask, is Donald Trump a closet Muslim like Barack Obama? But you've answered the question that you see Donald Trump as part of the problem. And I mean, I guess the question would be, is there anyone that is able to make America great again after Nashville gets nuked?
Well, you put some assumptions about Donald Trump on there that I wouldn't have said that way, but
Okay.
I think Donald Trump is an economic wizard, and he entered into the field of politics, so he plays some politics. But I don't think that given opportunity, he doesn't even have a favorite Bible verse, but he is supported by the Protestants in the United States. He is using and being directed, he's being used by the Protestants in the United States in order for political gain. He doesn't really understand where he's about to go. I think he is more of a character that is going to get caught up in a crisis and be led through the escalating crisis and make choice after choice and then end up on the wrong side of things. I don't think he's a closet anything except a businessman, but I really don't know.
I was also going to ask that, I mean, if theoretically, if Nashville converted to Islam tomorrow, would that be able to avert this nuclear strike or this punishment? Or because I guess Islam is not that's not really the main, that's not the sin that you're identifying for America. So I would assume it would not change anything, even if everyone became Muslim in Nashville tomorrow.
In the Bible, there is what's known as a conditional prophecy, and Jonah goes to Nineveh and he says, you need to repent or you're going to be destroyed, and they repented and they didn't get destroyed. I don't view Nashville in that context, because I understand from the prophecy of Balaam that the United States gets hit by Islam 3 times for the purpose of bringing a one world government together. I understand Nashville to be the second strike. That strike is because the United States has fulfilled its cup of probationary time. It has rejected the goodness that the Lord placed upon it at the beginning. It's turning the wrong direction. So Islam in that regard is being used as the Lord's judgment against an apostate church, just as Muhammad was raised up as judgment against the apostate church of Catholicism. So I know Islam can look at what I'm saying and say, oh, you're making us look like, we're really bad people. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying prophetically, you have a role that you will fulfill, and that's God's providence.
Yeah, maybe this is an important point for me to clarify then. So even for the Christians watching this, from what I've understood, when you're referring to the one world government, you are not saying like there's going to be an Islamic state or ISIS is coming in and taking over. I think what you're saying is that nuclear strike will then be the impetus for more U.S. governmental controls and bigger government and quarantines, and that is going to lead to the one world government. Am I on the right track?
The United States is going to insist that the entire world come under the umbrella of the United Nations.
Okay. Right. I get you. Yeah, I understand.
And that ought to be scary to every Muslim.
Yeah. Now, earlier on, Elder Jeff, you said that you disagree with my premise that the book of Daniel and the symbols in the book of Revelation are hard to understand or to decipher. But practically speaking, at the end of the day, you are the one pastor, right? You are the one pastor out of, millions of Protestant pastors all over the world who was able to see and identify and understand and properly and clearly interpret and process this prophecy of a nuclear strike on July 18th on Nashville. So what would you say to people who say that, the prophecy must be incredibly cryptic? If it's there, it must be incredibly cryptic and difficult to decipher. Otherwise, you'd have more than one pastor, with all due respect, you'd have more than one pastor in Arkansas who would have arrived at this conclusion.
My aptitude for the numbers and the chronology is not good. And there are three men primarily that have been leading out in that. One of them is up in Canada, the primary one that handles the chronology. The other one's in Ireland and the other one's in Holland. If I had an expertise in it all, is the line of the prophetic stories in the Bible coming together line upon line. My point is that there are men and women all over planet Earth that are involved in this message that have contributed to it. This has not been just my work. And so when you're talking about dates and chronology, most definitely that's coming out of Canada.
Okay, so then the question, I guess a follow-up question could be that has that Canadian pastor done enough to warn people? And this is a question to you as well too. Do you feel, Pastor, that you've done enough to warn people? I mean, should your ministry not be expending all of its funds perhaps to finding more billboards or advertisers or newspaper ads who might be willing to let this slip by? Because there would be, I guess, hundreds of thousands of lives at stake here.
Most of the people that are following this message, this movement, understand that Arkansas is the heart of this movement. They look to this as a point of reference. And we came into a mutual understanding when we realized we were going to warn Nashville that we would lead out because we're here close to Nashville. And the finances that have come in to help do it have come from across the globe. The light that puts together the prophetic message have come from across the globe. Whether we've done enough or not, I'm kind of thinking that our work is ahead of us after July 18th, and I'm uncertain what that's going to be. If, as you suggested earlier, nothing happens, and I go crawl into some hole and disappear, that's one thing. If what we're saying comes true, I have a hunch that there's going to be persons from all over the world that are going to start saying, what is the prophetic methodology that allowed you to see this? And on our website, we have roughly 2,000 hours of presentations of prophecy that have taken place over the past 25 years, and they all lead up to this conclusion.
Would you at least be willing to, I'm putting you on the spot here, would you be willing to issue some kind of apology on July 19th if this didn't happen? Would you take out an ad and apologize for alarming the people of Nashville? There's elderly people who, this could stress out or they could panic.
Did it? Do you have evidence that anyone is going to the psychologist for help or for drugs?
It doesn't seem to me that this has created any kind of movement that I'm aware of, or that people are rushing to get into underground bunkers or to
immigrate out.
Me neither. I happen to think that this is political correctness. No one wants to hear a warning message. Maybe the words that I used about Islam were the caustic words that you made that the point of reference for those that want to fight against it. But I had words that could be a point of reference against several powers in Bible prophecy. When the 19th comes along, if nothing's happened, I'm not afraid to evaluate what I've done. The people that have watched this ministry since 1996 when it started would give testimony that the times in that history where I've made errors in prophetic judgment or mistakes, I typically come out and correct them and apologize and move forward. So I don't doubt that I would do that.
Elder Jeff, yeah, I appreciate that. And in addition to the apology, the money that, as you said, has been donated by different people, since that money was refunded to you by the Tennessean, would any of that donation money be returned to the donors, or would they be happy for your ministry to keep it for some future project?
I have no idea about the convictions of someone that sends in money. The people that are following this message and this movement have been following it generally for years, and they're very sympathetic to what we're convicted of. I know it comes across like it's just me, but it's not just me. There's people following this in Africa, in Europe, in Asia, South America, and the North America, all over the world.
Yeah. And again, just to be clear, so that because both of you and I are both on the same page, I think, when it comes to not wanting to promote any kind of acts of hatred or violence towards American Muslims. So and you have been clear, but to be even more clear, I don't think then that you are suggesting that Muslims like me are in any way part of this conspiracy. Like American Muslims are not doing taqiyya, or Nashvilleian Muslims are not doing taqiyya and planning to detonate a nuclear device that they're going to hijack from the American government or something like that. Am I on the right track?
My understanding is that it's Islam from Bible prophecy, but what branch of Islam or who it would be, I have no idea, and I don't even try to figure it out. I'm looking at it simply at the prophetic level, and that's it.
Okay, and what under these circumstances do you think is the proper Christian response to American Muslims? In other words, even though you believe that this threat is going to come from the Islamic lands, this immediate threat, that is, and ultimately it's God in control. God is using Islam as a tool, as you said, to achieve his purposes. But for an average Christian who might look at their American Muslim neighbor with suspicion and think these guys are going to be part of this threat that is going to undermine our society, I mean, just to clarify, what is the proper Christian response to American Muslims? How would you interact with your Muslim neighbor if you had one?
Did you all understand that question? You kind of lost me there.
I'll make it simple. I'll make it simple.
I hope I would interact with my Islamic neighbor the same way I would interact with my atheistic or Christian neighbor, as Christ would interact with them.
Yeah.
Across the board with all mankind. But if you're talking in terms of having some kind of guilt and therefore responsibility about making this flamboyant claim about July 18th when it doesn't come to pass, all I can tell you is I need to get to July 19th before I can give you a reasoned answer for that.
Fair enough, fair enough. And the Quran says that, on the Day of Judgment, God will judge and he will decide between us in regards to that which we used to differ upon. In other words, the disagreements that we had, God is going to clarify everything for us. He's going to tell us everything. But in regards to your July 18th prophecy, fortunately, we don't have to wait until we die, and we don't have to wait until the Day of Judgment. July 19th, we will know whether this prophecy was correct or not, or whether your interpretation of the prophecy was correct or not. And yes, that was basically my question. Can Muslims and Christians, under these circumstances, still be friends? And I think you answered my question. So if I was your Muslim neighbor and I don't know, I ran out of ketchup and I came knocking on your door and asked if I can borrow your bottle, I guess you would be forthcoming and helpful.
No, I'd say that in this interview, you promised to take me out and eat some Hindu food, so let's not skip the ketchup and go get some Hindu food.
Indian food, man, not Hindu food.
Yes, Indian. That's right. I've never had Hindu food. I'm talking about Indian food.
Yeah, because Hindu is a religion. But no, absolutely. No. That's absolutely open invitation anytime, Elder Jeff. I enjoy talking to you, and next time you are here in Toronto, I would love to take you out for some Indian food, you and your family. We'd be happy to do that. So please do take me up on that offer. So I'm almost done here. I guess I'm repeating some of my questions, but on a scale of 1 to 10, how sure, how confident, how positive are you that this attack will happen? Or on a scale of 1 to a trillion, let's say, how confident are you that on July 19th you would be able to say to me, Sadat, I told you so?
At the beginning of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, the Lord raised up a man named William Miller that predicted the end of the world. Ultimately, the prediction was on October 22nd, 1844. And
The Millerites.
It wasn't the end of the world. And what Miller said after that is, he says, it wasn't I'm paraphrasing, it wasn't the end of the world, but as I look back over my history, I couldn't change a thing. And I'm in that boat. The reason that I'm not necessarily a stupid man, I might not be smart, but I've known for quite some time that when this advertisement and this website went out in the public arena, it was going to cost us. And it's cost us already in the first few days. Okay, I knew what was coming, but based upon the prophetic understanding that we have been involved with putting in place for the last 30 years, since 1989, I don't know what I could do differently. Therefore, if I'm 100% that the lines that we put together are identifying July 18th as a prophetic fulfillment. There may be nuances about that date that humanly I've misrepresented, but July 18th is firm in my mind.
So scale of 1 to 10 then?
10.
Okay. There were a couple of statements when I read your essay on July18.news on the website that you mentioned at the beginning. You said a couple of things which raised an eyebrow. You said July 27th is a symbol of Islam. And you also said August 11th is a symbol of Islam. Had you said August 14th, by the way, Pakistan gained its independence on August 14th. So you know there would have been something there. But August 11th, I'm just not aware of. I'm not aware of any date in the Gregorian calendar or in the Western calendar that has Islamic significance. So did you want to elaborate, or do you remember that?
In the beginning of the Advent history, there was a prediction that had to do with Islam based upon Revelation 9 that came from a man named Josiah Litch. And he predicted, based upon a time prophecy in Revelation 9 of 391 years and 15 days, that on August 11th, 1840, the Ottoman supremacy would cease. And on August 11th, 1840, the Ottoman supremacy that had been in rule since 1449 came to a conclusion. The Ottoman Empire continued on, but they placed their empire into the hand of the four great European powers at that point in time. They were under threat of Egypt, and it was in the foot soldiers for Egypt was the very beginning of Al-Qaeda. That's the very birthplace of the religion of Osama bin Laden. And under threat, the Ottoman Empire surrendered its supremacy on August 11th, 1840, just as Litch had predicted based upon Revelation 9. And before August 11th, 1840, the Protestants in the United States were telling Josiah Litch and Millerite Adventism the same thing that you're telling me, that this prediction of July 18th is a bunch of foolishness. But when it came to pass on August 11th, 1840, 200,000 people joined the Millerite movement. So I'm aware that most people are unfamiliar with August 11th, 1840, and I took that from Millerite history. But July 27th is 5 times in this prophecy in Revelation 9, which talks about the Ottoman Empire from 1449 to 1840. There are 5 major points in that history that took place on July 27th. And the story of the Ottoman Empire is the story of Islam. Every word in Revelation 9 is about Islam.
I think I understand. So by symbol of Islam, I misunderstood. You didn't mean that
it's an important symbol to us Muslims. You meant that.
Oh, no, I didn't mean that.
Within the context of the Bible, it's symbolic for Islam.
Yes.
Okay, I get you.
So is 9/11.
Now, when this attack happens on Nashville, is it only Nashville that you think is going to be affected? Like, is this a new nuclear device that is able to only target a specific area, or will you have like nuclear fallout, radioactive fallout? Will the
some of the things I don't know. Okay. I have no idea. I know we enter into a time. Ellen White has a statement more than once, but she has a statement I know word for word. She says, "Oh, that God's people had a sense of the coming destruction of thousands of cities." Where we're heading on planet Earth, Nashville is just the beginning of a destruction that's illustrated in the Bible repeatedly that leads to the second coming of Christ. Right. So if Nashville was hit on July 18th and there were other cities hit at the same time, it would not surprise me. Neither will it surprise me that a president such as Donald Trump will retaliate.
Certainly he would, yeah. Elder Jeff, you've been very, very gracious with your time. You've been very patient. I know originally I thought like it'll go, I said at least half an hour, but it's gone far over. I really appreciate your time as well as the time of the people that helped you. I hope it was a friendly, respectful, non-adversarial engagement. I do have one polemical question. I do have a polemically charged question that I want to throw at you, if I may.
Okay.
So your Christian prophecy is July 18th, nuclear strike on Nashville, July 18th, 2020. I'm a Muslim. Let's say I make a prayer, a Muslim prayer to Allah, and I ask Allah to please avert this attack and avert this punishment and spare the people of Nashville. So your prophecy and my Muslim prayer, what again, would it affect your faith in any way if on July 19th we were to reconvene this conversation, or I were to email you and say, hey, Elder Jeff, see, it didn't happen?
Well, email me on July 19th if that's where you're providentially led, and we'll find out.
Okay.